hosting together within the framework of our cooperation agreement, which is a good sign that we are moving forward in terms of this cooperation in a very good pace. Of course, you have the primary role in this, and we are thankful to your contribution in this process. From the upcoming years, we will have some other events we are discussing currently, more like legal matters related events, which is going to be quite interesting for Georgian lawyers. But today's session is more related to the admission to New York State Bar Association as a practicing lawyers. As I mentioned during our meeting at the Syracuse University College of Law, New York is one of the most popular destinations for the Georgian lawyers in terms of practicing the law in other countries. So I think this event is going to be very interesting, and after your presentation, many questions will be raised by the participants. We had more participants registered today, but for some reasons, not all of them, as I can see, could join, or maybe they will join on a later stage. But who are present here, I want to greet all the Georgian lawyers, all the members. Thank you for joining this discussion, and I do want to see, and I hope to see, that many of you will get a license to practice the law in New York State. And today, Andrew will give very important tips and advices to you how to proceed and how to achieve that objective. Again, many thanks to you, Andrew. Many thanks to the College of Law at the Syracuse University, and we look forward for our future cooperation. And from the next year, as you all know, we will initiate this special application process for the Georgian lawyers, within the framework of which our members will have this accelerated application process, which involves, among other things, the special scholarship, the 50% discount for the tuition fees. And as I said before to Andrew, and during our last meeting we had together, the Georgian Bar Association is also working with the governmental International Education Center so that we can build up tripartite cooperation, so that the Georgian lawyers, those 5 scholarships, can be actually somehow the Georgian government can add additional financing so that we can make it as a at least almost full scholarship for the Georgian lawyers to further support them to go to Syracuse University College of Law and get different degrees. So I wish you a good discussion and all the best in your future endeavors, including in terms of joining the New York State Bar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgi. It's a pleasure to be here with you virtually. As I mentioned, last time we had a discussion a few weeks ago, I only wish I was back in Tbilisi and could speak with all of you in person and talk about these matters more closely with each of you. But it is nevertheless a genuine pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Andrew Horsfall, Assistant Dean of International Programs at Syracuse University College of Law. And I have been working now for several months with Georgi on this new partnership and several other ideas for programs that we'll be rolling out and launching in 2022 as well. So it's very exciting for us here to be working with the Bar Association such as this, and look forward to working with all of you as well. I will take just a brief moment to share my screen because I have a few slides that'll help guide me through today's presentation. And while I'm doing that, I will also share with you my email in the chat here, because eventually, if you would like a copy of my presentation as a PDF, I'm happy to send you this document to refer to later. It is a lot of information. We'll go through it in a very organized and slow way, but it still is a lot of information you may want to reference in the future. And so this can be a helpful document for you. So just bear with me for one moment while I take care of these items.
Before you do that, Andrew, just for the people who joined us later, the order of the session will be in the following way. Andrew will make a presentation during which please mute your microphones. During the presentation, those who want to ask questions to Andrew, please write in the chat or raise the hand. So the Tamta will make a list of people of the participants who want to ask a question, and after the presentation is finished, Tamta will announce the names for those who will take a floor for the questions. This is how it's going to proceed, and then the floor is yours now.
Thank you so much. So I will share my email address with you here in the chat just for future reference, and I will be sharing my screen now. Hopefully you're able to see my opening slide here, which discusses or presents the New York Bar Exam on eligibility and advice for foreign educated students. And so my hope in this presentation is to help demystify the process for you of what it will take as a foreign educated lawyer from another country to become eligible to sit for the New York Bar Exam, and then the additional requirements towards a licensure for the New York Bar Exam. So to be able to practice in New York as well. It is quite complicated, but it is by no means impossible. And every year, many lawyers educated abroad come to the United States and pursue an LL.M or sit for the bar exam and end up becoming licensed. There are a lot of details. There are a lot of requirements that I will be discussing with you one by one. It is quite possible that you may have already satisfied some of these requirements, and we'll talk about those as well. There are also some steps in this process that you can start now, well before you begin an LL.M program in the United States also. So with that, I will get started first. I like to provide you with an overview of just where these rules come from, who is deciding the requirements for licensure in New York State. And here in New York, that is the Court of Appeals. So our highest court in New York State determines who is eligible to sit for the bar exam and who is ultimately eligible to become practicing here in New York. The Court of Appeals designates the New York State Board of Law Examiners, the BOLE, as the administrative body who carries out these rules, who interprets the rules of the court, who makes determinations about your foreign legal education and your LL.M program, and ultimately decides if you are eligible to sit for the bar exam. So these two bodies, the Court of Appeals and the Board of Law Examiners, might be bodies that you hear of in the future as you're reading more requirements and information about the bar exam. Just know that this is where all of these rules come from. It's their fault, it's their responsibility. I simply work as an administrator at a law school here to help you navigate through this regulatory framework. These hyperlinks now in this presentation are not active, but if you reach out to me in the future via email, I can send you this presentation with active hyperlinks to click to and read more information on these rules. With regard to the requirements, I have attempted to organize these requirements into three separate categories or three separate buckets or three layers, however you want to think about them. Moving from left to right on the screen, you can see there are some administrative requirements. This is really the paperwork. This is gathering your documents to create your profile and submit information to the Board of Law Examiners so that they can evaluate your prior foreign legal education. In the middle here, we have academic requirements. This is really where I sit as a US law school. My role is to make sure that you are, during your LL.M program, taking courses that will prepare you for the New York Bar Exam, but also satisfy some of the New York's academic requirements as well. So most of my work in terms of advising students is in this middle section of academic requirements. And then there are some additional requirements. These are more professional or other requirements. This involves things such as pro bono. So we require all students to pursue 50 hours of pro bono legal work as part of their license application. And then we have what's called the skills competency requirement as well. So going forward in this presentation, I'm going to talk about each one of these blocks of information. We're going to get behind each of these requirements and talk about the details of what you can expect and how you can satisfy each of these requirements. And then we'll move forward beyond that to talk a bit more about after the bar exam, what other administrative hurdles exist that you might need to comply with as well. So starting with the administrative requirements, this is the paperwork. that you need to think about and prepare for. First and foremost is the foreign evaluation form. This is really your online profile that you are setting up with the Board of Law Examiners. You're going into a website like this, you're completing and providing your biographical information, your data. There'll be questions about where you pursued your foreign legal education, so your LL.B. And then you will be given a Board of Law Examiner number, a BOLI number that is your identifier as a applicant to the bar exam. So this is something that you can start now. You can create your profile. It then will allow the New York Board of Law Examiners to communicate with you over email. They do a very good job and are very responsive at communicating with applicants over email. And so it really starts here with regard to determining your eligibility for the New York bar exam. In addition, and there's a lot of text on this slide and a few other slides, but I will try to organize it for you and demystify it a bit. In addition, while you are filling out your profile and setting up your status with the Board of Law Examiners, they will also need to see your foreign legal credentials. So there are two ways to satisfy the New York State requirements for foreign legal credentials. First and foremost would be to, if you are already a practicing lawyer in Georgia, you simply need to provide a copy of your law license indicating that you are a practicing lawyer in Georgia and you have met all the requirements that are needed to be practicing law there. That's the easiest way to do this. I assume for most of you, you are practicing in Georgia, you have your license, and you can submit this directly to the Board of Law Examiners as a way to satisfy this requirement. If you do not yet have a license to practice in Georgia, that is okay. However, New York will need to see documentation from you that your education will satisfy the requirements for becoming licensed to practice in Georgia. This letter or this documentation needs to come from the bar authority in your country. In some countries, that's the centralized bar association or the Ministry of Justice or some other quasi-governmental entity that credentials and licenses lawyers. So if that is the case, that you do not yet have your license to practice, you will need to provide documentation again that confirms that the education you've already received in Georgia will enable you to eventually become licensed to practice in Georgia. So for each country that can vary a bit, and we can talk in a bit more detail about perhaps how to satisfy this requirement with regard to being from Georgia as well. So again, there's a lot of text on here, but basically the summary of this slide is that New York wants to see that you are either licensed to practice in Georgia or that your education will eventually allow you to become licensed to practice law in Georgia as well. There's also information here about contact information, address information. Again, feel free to reach out to me so you can have this information at your fingertips in the future as well. So moving away from the administrative, the more paperwork requirements that you can start to work on now, we'll pivot over to the academic requirements. Again, lots of text on this slide. However, you simply need to know that nearly every LL.M program in the United States will enable you to become eligible for the New York bar exam. Here at Syracuse, every year, students pursue our academic program that prepares them for the bar exam quite well, and we can talk about what that means. In the column here on the left, in the blue, these are simply the academic requirements that New York expects to see during your LL.M program. So you're coming to a law school like Syracuse, you're taking a course that will expose you to the foundations of the American legal system, a legal writing course. There's an additional course of legal ethics, so professional responsibility, which we offer every semester. And then you need to take at least 2 subjects or 2 courses in areas which are tested on the New York bar exam. So we have about 20 different subjects or 20 different courses that we offer here with areas tested on the bar exam. It is not possible and it's not recommended to take every one of these subjects. Even our 3-year JD students do not take all of these bar subjects. But my advice to you is if you plan to take the bar exam, you should try to take at least 3 or 4 of these subjects to help prepare you and expose you to material that will be tested on the bar exam. So this looks like a lot here listed in the blue column. It's quite simple. It's pretty easy to satisfy these academic requirements. It's also easy to, while you're pursuing these required courses, you can also add in some additional elective courses. Maybe they're not subjects tested on the bar exam, but they interest you personally. So courses like immigration law or intellectual property law or national security law, et cetera. Those are not bar tested subjects, but you will have time in your schedule to add in some additional courses as well outside of these requirements also. So I spend a lot of my time advising students, sitting down with you one-on-one to map out your semesters in the LL.M program and to ensure that you're meeting the requirements that you need, but also pursuing other interests as well. So here at Syracuse, we have a special bar track. It's just organized advice that we give to students that will help you navigate through what can be a complicated registration process. And so we offer programming around the bar exam, so additional support with a assistant dean of bar and academic support who can sit down with you and help you prepare for your bar exam studies. We also offer a free bar review course. So after your LL.M program, many students will pursue a private test prep course through Barbary or Kaplan or Helix. And so here at Syracuse, we have arranged for all of our graduating students to receive a free bar review course over 7 or 8 weeks after your LL.M program. This saves you an expense of around $4,000 US, which is quite significant. And it's a very good bar review program as well. Other options would be to maybe pursue a third semester. So perhaps you'd like to stay beyond the traditional 2 semesters and add in an optional 3rd semester, simply to take more subjects, to gain more knowledge in areas that are tested on the bar exam as well. So this is really the academic piece, and you simply need to know that the LL.M program as a whole will be able to allow you to satisfy many of these all of these academic requirements that we have as well. And after your LL.M program, we have some paperwork that you'll need to do, which is to submit documentation to New York, simply verifying that you have satisfied all of these requirements, and that from our perspective, you should be eligible to sit for the bar exam here in New York. In addition to the courses that you will take, New York has several other exams that they require you to pass in order to sit for the bar exam, but also become licensed to practice. So while I say New York bar exam, I'm usually talking about the traditional 2-day bar exam that you might imagine or have read about in the past. But just know that in New York, we have the traditional 2-day bar exam, but there are also a few other small, shorter exams that are important, but are, I think, somewhat easier to work into your schedule and your academic life and your academic plan when you're coming to the United States. So the MPRE is one of those exams. It's the multi-state professional responsibility exam. It's offered in every state in the US. New York requires you to have a score of 85 to pass the exam. That's kind of an average or above average score. You don't have to get an A, you don't have to get the top grade on the MPRE. You just need to demonstrate sufficient knowledge in the area of legal ethics. This exam is offered several times a year, I think 3 or 4 times a year, 3 times a year, excuse me. So my advice to LL.M students is to first take professional responsibility as a course here in our program, and then you should arrange to sit for the MPRE exam that's offered after you're finished with your PR course as well. So again, simply knowing that this is a requirement, something you're gonna have to sort of work into your plan and make time and space for is helpful, and it's something that we'll talk about too with students who are here with us during their LL.M studies as well. So those are really some of the academic requirements, the degree program, but also the MPRE. Moving from those into the more professional requirements, we also require, as a state, New York, as well as a law school here at Syracuse, require that every graduate complete or pursue a minimum of 50 hours of pro bono work here in Syracuse or elsewhere in the United States. This work can be completed, must be completed after you begin your LL.M studies. I will tell you, this is something that you should have on your radar. You should know that this is a requirement for you. However, don't worry, about specific opportunities and missing opportunities around pro bono. Syracuse and many other law schools offer a range of different pro bono opportunities. It's almost every week that we have different pro bono programs and opportunities within the law school and within Syracuse for students to get experience. Practice areas range from criminal defense work, housing, landlord-tenant disputes, there's immigration work to be done, there's disability rights work to be done. We have very close communication and contact with our local legal aid services organizations, which provide pro bono service work, and there are many, many opportunities for students to do pro bono during their LL.M program. My general tip and advice for students is to put this goal for you in your 2nd semester. So don't worry about this in your 1st semester. You should first arrive with the goal of being successful in class and just sort of learning how to be a student, right? And embracing academic life. And then you can pursue the pro bono stuff in your 2nd semester after you get a bit more comfortable academically with your studies. So just know that this is a requirement, but this is something that we can easily help you meet as a school, as an institution here at Syracuse as well. And then last but not least, in terms of additional requirements, we have what's called the skills competency requirement. This is, again, a requirement for all students who are planning to become licensed to practice in New York, whether you're an LL.M student or a JD student. There are 5 different ways to satisfy the skills competency requirement. Pathway 5 is probably one of the easiest ways to satisfy it. And as I had mentioned earlier, it's very likely that many of you have already satisfied the skills competency requirement, because Pathway 5 will require you to have been practicing as a lawyer full-time for at least 1 year. You can have this experience before your LLM. So currently, for many of you, you can do it after your LLM as well. That's also fine too. But they simply need to see that you have at least 1 year's worth of legal experience as a practicing lawyer to satisfy Pathway 5. Now, if you are not yet a practicing lawyer, or you haven't satisfied this requirement yet, there are other ways to do that, and we can talk about that in more detail. One involves academic coursework you would pursue here at the law school. Another option is to pursue a 6-month internship here in the United States as well, which you would be able to do through some visa regulations that we can work through with you too. But again, simply know that this is unfortunately an additional bureaucratic layer of the requirements that we have in place for licensure to practice here in New York State. But there's information here and then on the PDF document that's linked on this slide as well for you too. So there is no one singular way to satisfy all of these requirements. My advice would be you begin with the administrative paperwork stuff now, set up your Boli account, your profile, think about an LL.M program, and I'm more than happy to talk with you about that as well too, either one-on-one or as a group also. And then just know that you will have some additional, more professional requirements also to satisfy either during or after your LL.M studies as well. However, eventually, what you will hopefully receive is an email from the Board of Law Examiners that tells you, congratulations, based on your prior legal education in Georgia and your LL.M program here in the US, you are now eligible to sit for the bar exam. But eligibility is really just one step. So what you will need to do is, after you learn you are eligible for the bar exam, like every other law student wanting to take the New York bar, you will then have to fill out the bar application and go through the process of arranging when you will sit for the next bar exam. Our bar exams in New York are offered in July and February every year. There are strict deadlines around when you can apply for the July or February exam. If you miss the deadline, you'll have to apply for the next one. But they are offered every February and July, just so that you know. That's more, again, of a paperwork process, just an application you submit to reserve your seat for the next sitting of the bar exam as well. As related to the bar exam itself, I had mentioned that there is the traditional 2-day bar exam. This is what we call the uniform bar exam, the UBE bar exam. And this is where you are tested on the subjects that you've learned in law school. The 2-day UBE bar exam is broken up into several different sections. So 1 day is 200 multiple choice questions. It's a grueling day, 100 questions in the morning, 100 in the afternoon. It's a very long day of multiple choice questions. The other day would be short essays and MPT, multi-state performance test, which is a mock case file that you read and you prepare a memo. And it's a bit more cerebral. You're writing and providing written essays in terms of your answers to those questions as well. So that's the traditional 2-day bar exam. I will say too, given that New York is now a uniform bar exam jurisdiction, along with around 35 other states, it may be possible, if your score is high enough, to transfer your UBE score to another state and maybe become licensed to practice in another state using your New York score, which is, I think, a very good option for many students. I've had a few students transfer the UBE scores from New York to Texas. There's also I think a state where there's a lot of international work being done as well. They transfer their scores to Massachusetts and New Jersey as well. So around New York State also, what you would need to do, and we'll talk about this in more detail later, is just make sure that you are satisfying the UBE minimum score requirement and then any other requirements of that state as a foreign educated lawyer too. But it shouldn't be impossible. It's just a bit more paperwork. Separate from the 2-day bar exam, so in addition to the 2-day UBE, in addition to the MPRE, the professional responsibility exam, there's also 2 additional layers to the New York bar exam, and that is, these are fairly new. This is first the New York law course. So this is 15 hours of online video lectures that are specifically related to New York law. As you probably know, we have a very fragmented legal system here in the United States. And so each state enjoys its own local laws, local rules. And so this 15-hour New York law course of online videos is designed to teach you specifically the New York laws around certain areas of family law, evidence, procedure, etc. So you have to complete that, and there's information here on sort of when you would do that as a student, as a bar applicant. And after you complete the New York law course, there's the New York law exam, which is a short online exam which tests you on the content delivered in the New York law course. Okay, so you can sort of think about this as a separate layer to the bar exam process, to the licensure piece, right? And so it is just something you have to keep in mind and plan for and prepare for. Okay. Last but not least, so assuming you're eligible for the bar, your foreign legal education checks out, you've done the LL.M, you've taken the MPRE, you passed it, you've taken the 2-day bar exam, which is, I think, the biggest hurdle. You passed that as well. You've done the New York law course, the law exam. That's been pretty easy, I think. The final piece is a character and fitness interview. New York is one of the last states in the country that has a face-to-face or person-to-person character and fitness interview. And you would meet with a licensed lawyer in New York who's a member of the Bar Association. And they simply want to know that you have the moral character and the veracity to practice law in New York. There's a bit of a background check where you would disclose any prior legal indiscretions, convictions, things of that nature. For many of you, that is not an issue and no problem. I think we're just looking to make sure that those who are becoming licensed to practice in New York are truthful and trustworthy and don't have a stain on their record. But this is an in-person interview. Perhaps they're happening on Zoom right now because of the pandemic. But again, this is really the final hurdle, the final piece of the admission process before you are then invited to become licensed in New York and take the oath of professional responsibility. So I've said a lot. This slide here takes us kind of back to the beginning in terms of reorganizing everything that I've provided you with, all the information, the details. You can see here again, we've got the paperwork, the administrative requirements, moving then to the academic requirements, which is really your LL.M program, where I spend a lot of my time on working with students, and then these additional professional requirements. The 50 hours of pro bono service work, the skills competency requirement that many of you have probably already satisfied, which is great. And then going through that process really then unlocks this additional step for you. So submitting the bar application, going through bar prep, taking a bar prep course, okay, to prepare for the bar exam, taking the New York Law course, the New York Law exam, the UBE, everything here in green, these are the exams you would take, and then last week, the chapter fitness interview, and finally the oath of office. So this is a lot, but I hope I've at least organized it for you in a way where you can see what is required, some of the sequencing of some of these requirements, when you can think about when you'll need to satisfy them, and just make sure that you have a holistic view of the total process. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it is complicated, no doubt, but it is certainly possible. It's not impossible by any means to go through this process. I will say too on this, some students, unless you start early and you're coming into your LL.M having really organized yourself and a lot of this before you come, this whole process can take more than a year. So it can take longer than simply coming to your LL.M and taking the bar exam. It can take a bit of time to satisfy some of these requirements. It just depends on when and how far ahead you plan for these things, these exams, this paperwork, etc. So the sooner you can start to think about that and plan for this, the better. So with that, I think this is my last slide. A lot of information. You have my email here. I'd be more than happy to take questions later today in this forum or in the future over email, and certainly can send you a copy of this presentation to refer to on your as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for this very useful and very interesting information. And I hope that our bar members will use this opportunity and have expressed and presented the presentation in a very positive way. For example, this regulations, which is really positive. And I just had a question, which I mean, you have already talked about the issue. My question was regarding the time. I mean, from the very first step to the end. I mentioned that it was not for a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a good point. So New York recommends that all students work on submitting their foreign credentials as soon as possible. Nothing many of you can start doing now, because what will happen is New York will need to receive your foreign transcripts and your license, and they need to receive originals of those documents sent directly to New York from their foreign education institutions. It can take them, depending on the time of year, it can take them a few months to review your materials. Because keep in mind, they're receiving applications and documents from thousands of students from around the world, and they're reviewing these transcripts and other credentials one by one. So what they advise is that if your plan is to sit for a July bar exam, so after an academic year, you should have submitted all of your transcripts and your documentation from your home country, submit that by October 1st of the previous year. So that's when they can guarantee that you'll have a decision on your documents and your application in time for you to apply to sit for the July bar exam. So that's with regard to the paperwork. But then there are additional exams. I talked about the NPRE, which is offered a few times a year. I would take that soon after your professional responsibility course is over. And then following graduation, of course, there's bar prep, which is 8 weeks, and then there is the New York Law course and New York Law exam. So it's a lot to do in a short amount of time, but the sooner you begin, especially on the paperwork, because that's really where the biggest debates occur, with getting documents sent to New York and having those reviewed by the board of examiners.
Thank you, Andrew. Our colleague has a question, and I will read for you if once I don't mind him by himself to ask you the question. If not, we'll, the question is following. When submitting the online foreign evaluation form, should we indicate information regarding LLB degree only, or do we also need to indicate information on the LL.M studies completed in Georgia?
So good question. The short answer is the true requirement is the LLB. They need to see the Bachelor of Laws, and they need to eventually see your transcripts from the Bachelor of Laws. So that is the minimum requirement. I believe, but I not know this for sure, that they will accept and ask you about additional degrees that you received, but they won't consider those when reviewing your eligibility application for your form. They need to see it's a minimum LLB degree.
We have, as I mentioned, the New York State Bar Association for Georgian lawyers. So the special notifications they received from the Bar Association, Georgian Bar Association, when submitting the documentation for New York Board of Examiners, so I remember, is that they provide the Georgian diploma to the Georgian Bar Association with the question for confirming that with this diploma they can sit for the Georgian Bar Association exams and become lawyers in Georgia. Usually this is how their diploma validation is confirmed in Georgia before they send it to New York.
And what makes I think it's possible, I'm sure it's the fact is that many of you are not the first people applying from Georgia. So New York is board of examiners, they have familiarity with what to expect, what to look for to satisfy those requirements, and so they should be somewhat familiar with your credentials and the documentation that you'll be just mentioning as well. So that should make it pretty easy. Unlike 10, 15 years ago when they were really just creating a lot of the processes and best practices that they have in place now.
Thank you, I ask our colleagues to ask questions. Not be shy.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to ask any questions either here in this forum or to me personally later as well.
I would like to have some, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, big apologies to being late. I had litigation, so sorry for this. Maybe you talked about this and I missed out, but what kind of obligation I do have regarding pro bono activities? For example, can I make these activities in Georgia, or I have to be there to say?
Excellent question. So I have up on here the slide about pro bono work, and I can tell you that we as a law school, as a state as well, New York requires at least 50 hours of pro bono work. That work must be initiated or be done after you begin your LL.M program. So you can complete it during your LL.M here in the United States, or after you return home to Georgia, you can also complete it after your LL.M, but it cannot be completed before you start your LL.M studies. Okay.
Okay.
And I will say too, I mentioned this earlier, there are a lot of opportunities. There's almost too many opportunities to choose from in terms of satisfying pro bono. 50 hours, and when you become aware, it's not that much. It's 1 full week of work, or you can spread it out over the course of a month or semester for 50 hours a week. It's not huge, and there are many opportunities here to do that. Of course, if you go through your LL.M, you don't have time, or there's not an opportunity for pro bono, and when you return to Georgia in the future, the next month or next year, you can satisfy pro bono work there, and simply be able to satisfy that hopefully done.
Thank you very much. And I would like to have one more question.
Sure, yeah.
No problem. Maybe this issue was discussed as well. What is the membership obligations? For example, fee and renewal of membership. I have to some kind of additional exams, for example, NYLE or periodic exams.
Yeah, so after you come into practice, there are obligations to obtain a certain number of what we call CLE, continuing legal education credits. I believe for most New York lawyers who are practicing here in New York, physically here, the requirement is 24 CLE credits or 24 hours of continuing legal education over 2 years. It's every 2-year reporting period to verify that you satisfy the CLE requirements. I believe, though I'm not sure, and we have to look at this, is that if you are outside of New York or outside the country, you can request an adjustment to your status so that you do not have to satisfy those requirements. You simply are sort of in good standing without a status for those requirements for the CLEs.
Thank you.
Of course.
Sorry, may I ask you one question?
Sure.
Now I'm interested. When we pass this exam, so we have the general specialization. There is no division in criminal law or in civil law specialization, as I understand.
That's correct. Yeah. And so
general, yes?
Yep. In general.
Well, thank you very much.
Of course, yeah. And maybe that's an important point too, because with regard to subjects which are tested on the bar exam, what makes New York State one of the more difficult exams in the United States is that we test 32 different subjects of law on the bar exam. Now, do not be intimidated by that at all. That's I know that's a lot. It's criminal evidence, there's business associations, commercial transactions, family law. I mean, it covers many, many subjects. But the purpose of doing a bar review course, so a bar prep program after your LLM, is to gain full exposure in a very concentrated way to the subjects which are tested on the exam in very clear, concise rules that are tested, but also to take many, many practice exams, practice questions, practice essays. It's kind of exhausting, but it is something that will absolutely prepare you for the bar exam as well.
Well, I have one question. Maybe it's funny, but I'm really interested during the bar exam if you are able to use any kind of source like books or anything.
Yeah, so not a funny question at all. It's a very good question because I think expectations are important. The bar exam is a closed book, closed note exam, so all of it is based on memory. I believe the exam gives you the option of whether you want to handwrite the exam or use a laptop for the exam. That may be changing. They may be moving over to it only on laptops through software. So that's something to look at in the future if something changes. But I can tell you it's a closed exam.
And one more question. Let's say you are a member of the bar association. If there is any kind of fees, like annually or monthly, or
so that's a good question. If you are here in New York, I can speak from my own experience. If you're here as a lawyer practicing or maintaining the standing, there's a biannual. So every 2 years, you pay a relicensure fee. I think it's around $350 or $375, but that's every other year, every 2 years. Right? Again, I'm not specific on the rules or the expectations if you are based abroad and in standing but are not practicing in New York. They may relax those financial obligations for you, but it would be a maximum $375 every other year for you.
For keeping the license, right? And
for maintaining the license.
To answer this question, the second is like New York State Bar Association, which is like basically you don't have to be a member of that particular state bar association.
Right, yeah.
But if you decide to be a member of that bar association, New York State Bar Association, we recently signed, as you know, Andrew, as well, the special memorandum with the New York State Bar Association and Georgian lawyers, members of the Georgian Bar Association, and will now become the members of the New York State Bar Association without getting a license from the New York Board of Examiners, law examiners. You can, we will in the coming weeks provide the instructions how the Georgian lawyers can join the New York State Bar Association, and it will be based on important discounts, including in terms of the membership fee. And after the Georgian lawyers can join the New York State Bar Association, basically they will have all the resources and opportunities provided by the New York State Bar Association that is provided for any members who practice law in New York State. This is also important information, and New York State Bar Association has its own membership fees regarding which we will provide information on our website and Facebook page in the coming weeks as well.
Okay, question. Again, I will start from the last part you're speaking. For example, when I'm a member of the Bar Association, can I practice law in New York, or I still have to get, for example, LL.M from USA college or other tests that I must take in the area you were talking about? Because what I heard, for example, in California, there is a way that you can practice but in a limited way without taking LL.M if you are taking other requirements. For example, you are practicing lawyer in your whole country, the education and something like that. Is it similar in New York?
Yeah, good question. So first with California, because each state, and this is kind of a problem in the United States, because each state has their own rules and requirements for licensure, there's very different pathways for each state, about 51 different jurisdictions. Unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately perhaps, California's rules are different. There are 2 different pathways to allow foreign educated lawyers to practice in California. One of them is through an LL.M pathway, another is through, I think what you're describing as being credentialed and licensed abroad. I think there may be some additional requirements, but then you can apply to get your license in a limited way. New York does its own thing. New York has always felt, we're special. We don't have to follow what other states say. They like to think that they're, I think a bit more immune or special with regard to the requirements around attorney licensing. So we have this pathway which requires the LL.M. I do want to make a distinction here that the New York Bar, which is think about it as the I don't want to say association. The New York Bar is what is giving you the license to practice. The New York State Bar Association is more of a professional organization. It's an optional organization that you can join after you are first given your license to practice as a lawyer in New York. Okay, so one is the administrative body that gives you a license that allows you to work and practice as a lawyer in New York. The other is a professional association of lawyers who come together around different practice areas, different affinity groups, different countries, such as the Georgian Bar Association's chapter of the New York State Bar Association, and that is optional. That's a membership fee that you pay to join that association.
One more question. Let's assume that I pass the bar exam and I practice lawyer. I can practice law in New York. I will still to get a working visa or not. For example, I am on vacation. I came on tourist visa to New York, and there is a job, for example, that I can take or not.
So you wouldn't be able to do that. There are 2 separate statuses, really. You have a license to practice is your professional qualification. It's unrelated to the visa regulations we have in the U.S., unfortunately. And so you would be required to get an employer-sponsored H-1B visa if you were planning to stay, or a permanent residency status if you were planning to stay and work as a lawyer. There's a question here.
Yes, there's an additional question. Pathway 5 obviously is requires to practice law for 2 years. This meant that the applicant should practice law for 2 years after obtaining the attorney's license in Georgia, or the legal experience that was received before getting the attorney's license in Georgia would also satisfy this requirement.
Yeah, so the short answer to that first is so pathway 5, let me just clarify, is 1 year's worth of full-time practice or 2 years worth of part-time practice. That would need to be practiced as a lawyer. So after you have your license to practice in Georgia, then you can start the clock on pathway 5 to accumulate 1 full year of full-time work or 2 years of part-time work. But it's not, let me just clarify, because I know every country has its own system. You can't use time spent as an intern or an articling or pupillage for the pre-traineeship before you get your license. It needs to be after you have obtained your license as an attorney to practice in Georgia.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other questions?
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, I missed this part. Do we have online sessions, or you just need to be in the US?
Yeah, so New York has made a few exceptions with regard to the pandemic in that they are allowing LL.M students to take online courses, and they will count those credits towards a qualifying LL.M degree. However, we expect that those waivers against online education will soon expire and will not be renewed. What we have heard is that New York very much wants its LL.M students to be in the US, learning in the classroom, here on campus in residence, they call it. And so you can expect that we will go back to a time probably next summer, 2022, and next fall, 2022, when the expectation will be that you are here on campus with us during your LLM studies for the total of your LLM program.
Okay, understood. Thank you. One more question. Do we have full tuition fees?
Excuse me, sorry, in terms of
full tuition fees to scholarships, I mean.
Yeah, so we do not offer full tuition scholarships here. We offer partial merit scholarships. And so we also have a pre-committed scholarship for members of the Georgian Bar Association that reduces the tuition in terms of 50%, 50. So half of the tuition is reduced through this partnership that we have with the GBA.
In total, it is around 80,000, yeah?
Tuition is 55, so half of that is around 25, 27,000. There are additional fees, so about $2,000 worth of fees, and then living expenses, which can be very high in the United States. Here in Syracuse, the cost of living is very affordable, very inexpensive as compared to other cities in the United States. Our living expenses are around $18,000 for a year. So that's your apartment, your rent, transportation, meals, things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I will ask one more question,
sure.
if you don't mind. I looked through the website, I do a program called training of LL.M. I know it's not coming to the thing, but I will look into that. What is the tuition for this program, and is the scholarship also in sense of this program?
Yeah, so all the same, we have one LL.M program, the General Style Masters, and so that scholarship and tuition scheme that I mentioned is already applied to that. Because it's a General Style Masters, we have 2 required courses that we offer. Every student must take, but then you're able to carve out and self-specialize and identify your areas of concentration, choose the classes that most interest you. And so that would be, you can choose courses around advocacy, skills, and training, or human rights and disability rights, or technology, commercialization, and property. So yeah, there's flexibility in the schedule.
No, I'm asking if I'm not, for example, I'm not interested in taking LL.M, but just taking the course, advocacy training, is a short course from what I looked through on your website, and how long does this program last, and what's the tuition for this program?
So we only have 2 degree programs. It wouldn't be possible for you to come outside of either the JD or LL.M. You have to come as a student under one of those programs. It wouldn't be possible to come and take one course or one module segment of the course. That's principally because in order to come here, you need to be on a B2 visa and enroll full-time in an academic degree program like the LL.M or the JD.
So if there are no more questions, we can finish up. No questions. Thank you, Andrew. It was a very interesting presentation for me as well. I was listening very attentively. And on behalf of all the participants, again, many thanks to you. As I said, we are finishing this session for the current year, but for 2022, we will have additional very interesting events, and hopefully it will be possible for us to host you in Georgia as well with some professors from the Syracuse University College of Law. We are looking forward to that opportunity. Thank you for now, and I wish you and all the participants